NewsHour tonight. The Supreme Court weighs whether federal protections for emergency medical care override a near total ban of abortions at the state level.
After months of wrangling in the House, President Biden signs a major foreign aid package that includes tens of billions of dollars for Ukraine.
And evangelical Christians in Ukraine are caught in the crosshairs of Russia's invasion.
Many prayer houses have been closed, sealed off, and believers are forced to gather in private homes in secret in order to pray and take part in rituals.
Major funding for the PBS NewsHour has been provided by
Consumer Cellular. This is Sam. How may I help you? This is a pocket dial. Well, somebody's pocket. Thought I'd let you know that with Consumer Cellular, you get nationwide coverage with no contract. That's kind of our thing. Have a nice day.
and Peter Bloom Kovler Foundation, upholding freedom by strengthening democracies at home and abroad.
Certified financial planner professionals are proud to support PBS NewsHour. CFP professionals are committed to acting in their clients' best interest. More information at letsmakeaplan.org.
The Walton Family Foundation, working for solutions to protect water during climate change so people and nature can thrive together. Supported by the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, committed to building a more just, verdant, and peaceful world. More information at macfound.org. And with the ongoing support of these institutions. This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the NewsHour. It was a charged atmosphere at the Supreme Court today as the justices heard arguments in a major abortion case out of Idaho. The court looked at whether a federal law requiring hospitals to provide abortion care in emergency situations would apply to states with strict abortion bans. Currently, more than 24 states ban or severely restrict abortion access, but there are 6 states in particular, including Idaho, with no health exceptions.
The case brought protesters on all sides of the abortion issue to the Supreme Court today for what was the second case on reproductive care before the court in the last month. Special correspondent Sarah Varney joins us. She spent years covering healthcare and is closely following this case. Sarah, thanks so much for being with us. The arguments today were lively, and there was a lot of talk about this federal law and how it is applied. Walk us through the arguments.
So the Idaho law that you outlined went into effect after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade about 2 years ago, and it made abortion illegal except when a woman is about to die due to her pregnancy. So the Biden administration sued Idaho, saying that the state's ban conflicts with a federal law called EMTALA, that stands for the Emergency Medical Treatment and Active Labor Act. And EMTALA basically requires hospitals to stabilize all patients, even if that requires an abortion, not just when the patient is about to die, but to preserve their health.
And there were some intense exchanges during the session today, especially from the court's liberal wing, who seem to take issue with the Idaho law. Let's listen to Justice Sonia Sotomayor.
Idaho law says the doctor has to determine not that there's merely a serious medical condition, but that the person will die.
Yeah.
That's a huge difference, counsel.
We agree that there is daylight between how the administration is reading EMTALA and what Idaho's Defensive Life Act permits. We agree that there is a controversy here.
No. There's more than a controversy. What you are saying is that there is no federal law on the book that prohibits any state from saying, even if a woman will die, you can't perform an abortion.
So what concern is she highlighting here?
But Justice Sotomayor is saying that if the federal government can't compel states to provide medical care, in the sense that it's always going to be up to the state then to make that call. So then conceivably a state like Idaho, which does have fetal personhood, could prioritize fetal life over a pregnant woman's life, even when that pregnancy is not likely to survive. And the briefs in this case are full of real-life stories of pregnant women being denied standard medical care in Idaho and around the country. Justice Sotomayor described a real-life case of a woman in Florida. She was 16 weeks pregnant when she went to the ER, and she felt a gush of water leave her body. As many of us who have been pregnant know, that that's a premature rupture, which puts you at risk for serious uncontrolled infection. She was refused treatment because the fetus, which would not survive, was still alive, and eventually the woman bled out and was finally given an abortion. These are the kinds of cases that the justices were bringing up today. And the justices here were focused much more on the harm and suffering, permanent harm, hysterectomies, loss of fertility that women face with pregnancy. And at one point, it was actually really surprising. Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who is a staunch opponent of abortion rights, seemed kind of taken aback by what she was hearing that was happening at hospitals in Idaho and elsewhere.
I'm kind of shocked, actually, because I thought your own expert had said below that these kinds of cases were covered. And you're now saying they're not?
No, I'm not saying that. That's just my point, Your Honor, is that...
Well, you're hedging. I mean, Justice Sotomayor is asking you, would this be covered or not? And it was my understanding that the legislature's witnesses said that these would be covered.
Yeah, and those doctors said if they were exercising their medical judgment, they could, in good faith, determine that life-saving care was necessary. And that's my point, is a subjective...
But some doctors couldn't. Some doctors might reach a contrary conclusion.
So, Sarah, in the Dobbs decision, it was Justice Alito who seemed particularly focused on this matter of fetal life. And in today's arguments, he talked a lot about unborn children.
Regarding the status and the potential interests of an unborn child. The hospital must stabilize the threat to the unborn child. And it seems that the plain meaning is that the hospital must try to eliminate any immediate threat to the child. But performing an abortion is antithetical to that duty.
And in many of the cases you're thinking about, there is no possible way to stabilize the unborn child because the fetus is sufficiently before viability that it's inevitable that the pregnancy is going to be lost. But Idaho would deny women treatment in that circumstance.
So put that portion of the arguments in context for us.
So Justice Alito here really appears ready to take up this question of fetal personhood, which has really been the ultimate goal of the anti-abortion movement for a long time. Justice Gorsuch also mentioned fetal personhood during the arguments. There are laws in Idaho, Alabama, Texas, and many states that say that from the very earliest moments of pregnancy, that pregnancy is a full person under the law. And Justice Alito's Dobbs decision, as you said, and in the question in the Christone case and here today, really signals a willingness to go there. And to essentially say that if there's a toss-up between having to choose between a woman's life, a pregnant woman's life, and a fetus's life, that it's up to the state then to decide who gets to win out in that contest.
We know this case will likely reverberate beyond Idaho. What's at stake here?
Well, Texas is also sued under a similar premise around EMTALA. So if Idaho wins in this case, we can be sure that at least 6 states that don't have this health exception for the mother will follow Idaho's lead. I mean, we're already seeing this really play out on the ground in emergency rooms. So you would imagine that those types of cases of women showing up and being turned away from emergency rooms would just continue to escalate.
NewsHour special correspondent Sarah Varney. Sarah, thanks so much.
Thanks, Jeff.
In the day's other headlines, President Biden signed into law a massive foreign aid package after months of delay amid Republican opposition. The $95 billion measure includes assistance to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. President Biden celebrated the achievement today at the White House, saying it was long overdue.
It was a difficult path. It should have been easier and it should have gotten there sooner. But in the end, we did what America always does. We rose to the moment. We came together. We got it done.
President Biden said they'll send the first shipment of new aid to Ukraine in the, quote, next few hours. That initial $1 billion package is expected to include air defense capabilities, armored vehicles, and artillery rounds. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky thanked U.S. lawmakers for approving the broader $61 billion aid package for his country. He said, quote, this vote reinforces America's role as a beacon of democracy and leader of the free world. That comes as Ukraine, for the first time, used long-range ballistic missiles the U.S. secretly sent them to strike Russian forces. The weapons can travel nearly twice as far as their mid-range versions. Meanwhile, officials in China are condemning the new U.S. assistance to Taiwan. They say the move pushes the self-governing island into, quote, dangerous situation.
The Taiwan issue is purely China's internal affair and does not tolerate any external interference. We resolutely oppose it. We urge the United States to take concrete actions to honor its commitment not to support Taiwan independence and stop arming Taiwan in any way.
Beijing's criticisms came as U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Shanghai. He's in China for 3 days of talks with senior officials aimed at stabilizing relations between the two countries. Israel has launched strikes on northern Gaza for a second day. The Israeli military targeted Beit Lahia on the northern edge of the Strip after warning locals to evacuate a day earlier. Residents say the shelling was as intense as during the start of the war. Separately, Israel says it struck around 40 targets in southern Lebanon today as its battle with Iran-based Hezbollah intensifies. Hamas released a video today of Hersh Goldberg-Polin, an American-Israeli hostage who was abducted on October 7th. It features the 23-year-old who lost part of his arm in the attack, delivering a statement likely crafted by Hamas. It's not clear when the video was recorded. Goldberg-Polin's parents released a video today saying they are relieved to see their son alive, and they urged mediators to reach a hostage deal.
We're here today with a plea to all of the leaders of the parties who have been negotiating to date. Be brave, lean in, seize this moment, and get a deal done to reunite all of us with our loved ones and to end the suffering in this region.
Negotiations for a hostage deal and ceasefire remain deadlocked. Hamas rejected Israel's latest proposal earlier this month because it didn't include a permanent truce, among other terms. Pro-Palestinian demonstrations spread to more colleges today. The University of Texas in Austin saw hundreds of protesters march through campus, leading to tensions with state troopers. Several demonstrators were arrested. Some of those involved say it went too far.
From the beginning, we wanted a peaceful protest. We wanted something that was just like a community gathering that was meant to show our frustration with the university, but unfortunately did not turn out that way.
Meanwhile, at Columbia University, campus officials announced they will extend talks with pro-Palestinian protesters for another 48 hours. The deadline to remove their encampment was last night. This afternoon, House Speaker Mike Johnson was interrupted by demonstrators during a visit to the school to address anti-Semitism on campus. Arizona's House voted to repeal the state's near-total ban on abortions today. It now moves to Arizona's Senate. 3 Republicans joined all 29 Democrats in voting to overturn the Civil War-era measure, which offers no exceptions for rape or incest. The vote comes 2 weeks after Arizona's Supreme Court revived the law, sparking national headlines and putting political pressure on Republicans in the battleground state. The Biden administration issued new protections today for airline travelers. They require cash refunds for canceled flights and for flights that are delayed at least 3 hours for domestic travel and 6 hours for international. The rules also require airlines disclose any additional charges like seat selection or carry-ons before booking. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg said today the changes won't just benefit passengers.
Unsurprisingly, airlines are not enthusiastic about us holding them to a higher standard. But I believe that this is in the interest of the airline sector because it builds passengers' confidence in airlines as a whole.
The new regulations will take effect over the next 2 years. On Wall Street today, stocks closed with little change as interest rate concerns overshadowed some strong corporate earnings. The Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 42 points to close at 38,460. The Nasdaq rose 16 points, and the S&P 500 tacked on a single point. And New Jersey Congressman Donald Payne Jr. died today. The Democrat and member of the Congressional Black Caucus replaced his father in the seat before serving 6 terms. His passing comes as Republicans hold a slim majority over Democrats in the House. Payne suffered a heart attack earlier this month. He was 65 years old. Still to come on the NewsHour, concerns over the spread of bird flu after fragments of the virus are detected in cow's milk. 25 years after his son was killed at the Columbine mass shooting, a father continues his calls to end gun violence. Judy Woodruff visits a North Carolina community trying to talk through its divisions, plus much more.
This is the PBS NewsHour from WETA Studios in Washington and in the West from the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism at Arizona State University.
We return now to that sweeping foreign aid package that's now law and set to deliver tens of billions of dollars to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. Lisa Desjardins is here now to walk us through what happens now. So, Lisa, the biggest portion of that foreign aid package is for Ukraine. How soon does the money and the weapons get there?
Almost immediately, within hours or days is what we're being told. The reason we want to look at this is because while this has passed Congress, there's a lot of drama and intensity there. This is a world kind of matter now. What happens to all this money? So let's look at some of the biggest money, especially for Ukraine. Where those $60 billion for Ukraine are going, the largest portion, $23 billion, is actually to replenish U.S. stockpiles, weapons we've already sent. $14 billion would be new weapons for Ukraine that would go through contractors here in America, and $8 billion would be a transfer of existing weapons. Now, what do we know about the weapons? Ukraine, as you saw yourself, in desperate need. What are they getting? The White House today announced the first $1 billion or so worth of weapons that will be going. Mostly, they said it would be short-range anti-aircraft missiles. We know the need there for Ukraine. In addition, there would be artillery, those big guns, 105 millimeter, 155 millimeter Bradley vehicles. We've talked about that on this show before, and the needs there in Ukraine, and anti-armor systems and mines to push back at the Russians. Now, what's not on that list of what was announced today? Long-range anti-aircraft systems, ATACMS. The White House did announce, and Nick Schifrin has been reporting also, that there were actually ATACMS sent in the last month secretly to Ukraine, that Biden and his administration were able to get those in there. What we didn't see on this list were Patriot missiles, those longer-range anti-aircraft missiles. Big deal, because as you saw, the missiles that Russia can send can take out areas around Kyiv, like that power plant, for example, where you saw the damage. They were in need of anti-aircraft missiles, potentially like Patriot missiles. We're waiting to see if the Biden administration acknowledges that more of those kinds of long-range, more expensive weapons will be sent soon.
Lisa, as you mentioned, it was a journey to get here, right? This took over half a year amid some early Republican opposition, but it did pass overwhelmingly. What does that tell us about the Capitol right now?
Really remarkable in this time of incredible partisanship that national security actually was a unifying cause, and not just any national security, but with a worldwide view. So listening to senators last night, Republican leader Mitch McConnell and Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, it was some of the most kind of unifying rhetoric I've heard from both of them. They called this aid package historic.
We can wish for a world where the responsibilities of leadership don't fall on us, or we can act like we understand that they do. Tonight, as at so many moments in our history, idle calls for America to lower its guard ring hollow.
Failure to pass the supplemental would have been a gift to Putin, to Iran, to Xi, and hurt America politically, militarily, economically, and culturally. I'm glad that when it mattered most, finally, both parties came together to do the right thing for our nation's security.
There were, of course, opponents to this, largely Republicans. Now, while there were fewer Republicans who voted no in the Senate than the previous version of this bill, those who did said this was a misguided mistake.
Congress cares more about sending billions to wage endless war in foreign countries. Cares more about this than saving our own country. It seems no price is too high. No weapon system is off limits. Our only strategy appears to be spend, and then spend some more with little to no thought given to the consequences.
This is a long-time American debate, but it ended this time with America involvement overseas.
In the meantime, we know there's aid in this package for Israel and Taiwan as well. Where will that money go?
Let's go through that quickly. For Israel, first of all, $14 billion. You'll see a couple of different figures, but that is money just for Israel itself. Also in that same bill is another $9 billion of humanitarian relief that will include Gaza and other crisis points around the world. Now, $8 billion will go to the Indo-Pacific region. There's a lot happening there in the Indo-Pacific region to counter China. That will include money to try and, let's say, expand U.S. submarine presence in that region, but also loans to some of those countries.
So we're talking about $95 billion in aid. What are your sources telling you in terms of how long this is going to last?
I know, it's been a long time even getting here, right? Now, if you think about this, $95 billion, let's look at Ukraine, $60 billion in this bill. Now, up until this point, for Ukraine, we've given about $44 billion. So this is more than the U.S. has given in aid since that start in 2022. Talking to sources, they think that this can last in Ukraine for perhaps a year. If the United States wants, they can send more aggressive weapons, more expensive weapons, then it will last less time. But at least through the election, maybe a year.
Thank you so much.
Liquor.